Hi, I'm Heidi Kreiser-Daroff of the Israel Forever Foundation, and we're here today with Jerry Klinger of the Jewish American Society of Historic Preservation. Welcome, Jerry.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for being here with us. Can you tell us a little bit about your background in Jewish causes?
My background in Jewish causes? Well, it's sort of a mixed story right there. My father wanted me to have nothing to do with Jewish causes whatsoever because he was a Holocaust survivor from Buchenwald. But he died when I was quite young, and my mother had the say as to what kind of Jewish education I have. She sent me to a yeshiva. So in the yeshiva, I became probably the worst student they ever had.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and they were glad when I left because their scores went straight up. But there it's a bit different because it ties into the background of how did I know about Jewish history and where did I pick up from there. In a yeshiva, the one that I went to, Jewish history ended with the destruction of the Second Temple and never existed in the middle until the birth of Israel. And I sort of was reading on my own, and this is what used to use the rabbis so much because I used to ask questions. They didn't like that kind of thing about the middle period. And I knew there was another history, and I began reading and learning on my own. And then I suddenly knew I had to know more about who our people were and who I was. And Jewish history became part of it.
So your interest in Jewish history was sparked by not learning about Jewish history.
My interest was sparked because the rabbis didn't want me to learn about Jewish history because there wasn't any Jewish history.
Interesting. So tell us about how the Jewish American Society of Historic Preservation got started.
Like many things, it's an accident. I don't claim to be smart enough to have figured out how to do this. I mean, over the years since the Society's been in existence, we've done projects in 29 states and 5 countries. We have over 7 million people a year now who see and benefit from one of our efforts. But how did we get started? It was an accident, total accident. My wife and I were in Columbia, California at a B&B doing the B&B routine. And Columbia is an old gold mining town, not much to do, looks like 1880s. And we went out for a spazier, for a little walk at night, and there was nothing to do. But we saw a light in a window, and I said, let's go take a look, something to do. Turns out that it was a bookstore, and I went in there, and they had on display a book called Pioneer Jews by Helen Ropeland, the Jews of the West. And I'm looking at this saying, what the hell is a pioneer Jew? Remember, I'm a yeshiva background.
Right.
I had no idea about it. Bought the book, and then I went, wow. Next year again, B&B bit, we were in Santa Fe, and I told my poor suffering wife, I said, the first Jewish house of worship, permanent Jewish house of worship in New Mexico is just over the hills there, just a little bit away. Actually, it was 60 miles away, but I didn't tell her that. It was in a little town called Las Vegas, New Mexico, really called Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
The first permanent Jewish house of worship, and I went to look for it, and I got to the address, and I'm standing outside of a little Catholic church, and I'm pirouetting in the street, saying, where are the Jews? I'm looking. Went and talked to the city fathers, and it turns out I was standing in front of the synagogue.
Oh, wow.
That church had been the synagogue. And then I thought about it, and I said, well, maybe if I can put a little sign up here, there won't be any dummies like me just rotating in the street. And from there, after we completed the project, it became quite large. Everything involving the palace of the governors, and people came from France, from everywhere, that were really Jews from that area.
Oh, my goodness.
And the priest gave us permission again to restart synagogue services every Friday night in the former synagogue, now at the church. And I thought, I wonder if I can do this anywhere else. And I did.
What a great idea. What a great idea. So tell us how you first became involved in the story of the Exodus, and what is the importance of the ship to you?
I have no direct connection to the Exodus any more than any other Jew does. I didn't have family on it. I can't say that, that kind of a relationship. But I've been very involved with the story of Israel and the problem of memory. If we ask others to know who we are and to know our story and to understand how the Holocaust has shaped our way of thinking and how it affected the birth of Israel, and we won't remember the story, then why should we expect them to remember the story? So I've done, this is actually, the Exodus will be my 6th project for Israel along these lines. I found and reburied the last descendant, the abandoned last descendant of Theodor Herzl, ironically the only Zionist in his family. He was buried in Washington. I had him disinterred and brought back to Israel. He's buried up on Mount Herzl now with his family.
Oh, wow.
I brought back Colonel John Henry Patterson, the first commander of a Jewish army in 2,000 years. And that was done with Prime Minister Netanyahu. I think that was about 2 years ago. I've done Heschler, I've done a number of others. But as far as the Exodus is one of those stories that always bothered me. Because there are Memorial City Exodus in Germany, France, Italy, the United States. Ironically, nothing specific to the Exodus in Israel. Never has been.
Wow.
And it does seem to me that this is wrong. It goes back to the problem of memory. If we won't remember, why should we expect them to understand anything about this story, this unusual story of the ship that launched the nation? That's what she was called.
Incredible. Now, you've spearheaded the effort to create a permanent memorial in Haifa Port. Why did you choose that location?
The Port of Haifa was not my very first location. I was trying to work for 10 years, and I was getting, it's not unusual when you try and do things. You try and open one door, and somebody slams the door and says, I'm not interested, I don't want this and that.
So you've been working on this for 10 years?
Yeah, this has been off and on
Wow.
for 10 years, and I have other things. I have about a dozen projects running at the same time, so if something doesn't work, then I'll turn my attention to something else, and I'll come back around and circle around. But this was going to be the 70th anniversary of the Exodus coming into Haifa and changing the course of history, not just for Israel and for the Jewish people, but for the world. And so I circled back and I said, well, I have to work on this again. And I connected with a individual, a sculptor named Sam Philippe in Israel, who I had met through the Christian embassy, because we had done work together when I had done the project with Colonel Patterson and the Prime Minister. And I was talking to Sam about it, and I provided all the funding for everything. You know, I didn't have to ask anybody. God is generous in that regard. And little by little, doors began to open, so that we're going to be doing this project. That is, and by the way, the memorial is already in place. I think it's already been seen by some of your people.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And what'll be interesting about it is that it's touching lives in a way that you can't believe. I had there's a Facebook page for the Exodus, for the service, dedication service that we're doing. One of the families commented, "We finally have a memory, a memorial for us. My mother was on that ship." This was personal, deeply personal for them.
That's incredible.
And when we have the program, last week the United States Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, confirmed through the State Department he's coming.
Oh, that's great.
Natan Sharansky will be there. Minister Yoav Galant, Deputy Minister Jackie Levy, from Jerusalem, the Deputy Mayor Yael Antevi is going to be coming. The Chairman of the Port is going to be, I'm going to have to remember, I'm going to blank out his name and he's going to kill me. But I'll think about it in a minute. But we're putting this together, and we're going to have at least 500 people that we know of.
That's incredible.
That'll be coming for this event. We would have had more, but it's hot.
Yeah.
We only have air-conditioned room for so many.
Yeah, no, July in Israel is hot. Now, what do you hope that visitors, after the ceremony, I imagine there'll be many visitors over many years, what do you hope that when they come to visit the monument, what do you hope is the takeaway experience for them?
Takeaway experience is simple: memory. Remember I told you we have a problem. In Israel today, less than half of the people, if you ask them who Theodor Herzl was, has any clue what you're talking about.
Oh, no.
It's a tragic thing. I mean, you can ask here in this country, who was Thomas Jefferson, and people will look at you like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But in Israel, we have this is a problem. It's not necessarily special for Israel, but When we talk about the Exodus, they don't know either. When I first started doing this, I wanted to place a stone on the grave of William Bernstein, Bill Bernstein. He was an American sailor, member of Machal Haganah, who was murdered on the Exodus by the British when they attacked.
Oh my
And I
goodness.
wanted to find his grave. So I went to a tourist office in Haifa and I said, Bill Bernstein, and they didn't know what I was talking about. I said, all right, I'll accept that. Lots of Bill Bernsteins in Israel, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I said Exodus, and they went, you mean Yetziat Mitzrayim? You mean like in Passover? And I went, I have a problem here.
Oh my goodness.
We have a problem
Yeah.
there. In Israel, when you try and talk about the Exodus, very few young people really know the drama, the intensity of the story that changed world opinion in favor of Israel. This ship made Israel possible on multiple levels. So what am I looking to establish? The location of the memorial is going to be at the International Cruise Ship Terminal outside. We are estimating with the port now we will have somewhere between 500, could be as many as 1 million people a year will be going through this location. The big cruise ships are starting to come in. We have ferry service from Haifa to Akko. That's about 4 times a day. And of those numbers coming in, 20% of them are Arabic-speaking people.
Oh wow.
They don't have much of a background.
That's
So
interesting.
what is the legacy I'm hoping for? That for once we can tell the story more broadly to the Arab-speaking world, get it more understood to the Hebrew-speaking world, and share it to the world, period. To understand about the meaning of the birth of Israel and why it became so linked to this ship.
Incredible.
Little tangent story. I'll bet you didn't know that the Israeli Air Force at that time, 95% of them were foreign volunteers, Machal. Most of them were American. And of that number, 21.6% of the Air Force were non-Jews.
Really?
Non-Jews.
Wow.
They
Did not
came,
realize that.
they came and joined to try and do the right thing. Same thing was true on the Exodus, not to the same number, but it was a non-Jew on board who made the key difference. One of the key differences for the birth of Israel. And I'll get back to that. But I think you'd like to hear a letter from Bill Bernstein. It's the last letter he wrote from the Exodus
Sure.
to his brother Mo in San Francisco before the British attacked and he was killed. And he writes this, and it'll give you a little feel for why this is of significance. He wrote, Dear Mo, this is April 21st, 1947. Dear Mo, today is our last day in Marseille. We sail tomorrow for Italy. From what I understand, we will pull into some small port in northern Italy and remain there for about 5 weeks while birthing facilities are put up. Our people have only one burning desire, the second deliverance to Eretz Yisrael. The first migration was supposedly the handiwork of God. The second one, we fight for. 3 days ago, the Jews here in Marseille and aboard our ship celebrated the 4th anniversary of the resistance of the Warsaw Ghetto. Every one of the 60,000 Jews were massacred there, defending the street, small arms against the German army. We held it for 5 days. Only 5 days of resistance and 4,000 years of persecution. Something we should be ashamed of. However, the time isn't far off when we'll redeem our honor. Perhaps you and I won't be around when it happens, but I can see it taking place. I was at the refugee camp on the outside of Marseille yesterday. I saw practically all young men and women. They all speak Jewish. Some speak Hebrew, and all will eventually be in Eretz Yisrael raising sabras on good communal farms. A good many of those kids, they have numbers tattooed on their arms as proof of the life they have lived for those years. I don't know if I'll be able to mail any more letters in my next port, so don't worry. If you don't hear from me for a few weeks, I'm feeling fine. Say hello to everyone. Bill.
That is incredible.
2 months later, as the British attacked on July 18th in the international waters, remember this is an unarmed ship,
Yeah.
4,500 people on board, crowded, terribly crowded. Bill was at the wheel, in the wheelhouse, and the British boarded and they were shooting, clubbing. He wouldn't let go of the wheel. He was trying to get the ship to shallow waters to get where the British couldn't go. And the British didn't think twice. They clubbed him and crushed his skull and killed him.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. But his letter is so beautiful. And his letter really gives us a sense. Thank you for sharing it. Because I think it really gives us a sense of the dream of our people and how he personally was witnessing it taking shape and the Jewish people going to that next level from being the wandering people to being set on a new homeland, back in our homeland. So thank you so much.
Quite welcome.
That's incredible. Are there other sources to read more about him? Are there, like, do you know?
I
if
have
there's
his
any
letter. If you go on
books
my
or-
website and you go right underneath the Exodus
on the Jewish American
Society, you know, on the left there's tabs. You go
Okay.
down to one that says International. The second one down, because the first one was Buchenwald, that's a project that I'd done. Underneath that is the Exodus, and then right underneath that is a tab for Bill Bernstein.
Wonderful.
And there's a whole series of letters that he had. This was just a piece that I pulled out because, in a nutshell,
Yeah.
he's trying to tell the story.
Yeah.
He was willing to risk his life,
Incredible.
and he did.
And you did. But we are all so grateful, and now we all get to share in that dream that he saw happening. So that's wonderful. And I'm personally very much looking forward to seeing the monument on my next trip to Israel. So
Are you going to be there in July?
I'm not going to be there in July. I'm going to be there in August.
Oh, even
So,
hotter.
yeah, even hotter. But I intend to go because Exodus is one of my favorite stories. So
She is still out there someplace. We sent the dive team out to look for her.
I remember you had told me that on a call one day a while ago when we were talking.
We tried to find her. There's a lot of controversy. Some people said that she was cut up for toaster ovens. Think of this as a symbolic way of looking at it. In the 60s, the ship was burned accidentally on purpose. In 1952, she burned to the waterline. They were going to convert her into a museum of the Aliyah, and some people say it was a welder's torch. I mean, you can read it any way you like. The reality was that there was a fire of massive proportions. The entire ship was destroyed. So there was nothing, there was a hulk, it was a derelict. So they towed it out into the harbor area near the Kishon, not far from Shemin Beach is the area. And they sank it. You know, they sank it. You know, it was just nothing. What are they going to do with it? About 64, somebody decided we can make toaster ovens. I mean, the hull was iron. It had value. So they brought it up, and they were towing it back out. She went back down. They tried one more time. This time in their genius said, let's cut her in half, and we'll bring up the pieces.
Oh my goodness.
And they got them up. Guess what? They went right back down.
Oh, that's...
So in a sense, it's like the Exodus is saying, I'm not leaving.
Yeah.
And she didn't.
Wow. That's kind of spooky and incredible at the same time.
She wouldn't
She
leave.
doesn't want to be a toaster oven.
Not just a toaster
deserves
oven.
more
She
than
did
that.
not want to leave El Yisrael.
Wow.
She refused.
Wow. That's amazing. That's an amazing way of looking at that story. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. We're looking forward to visiting the monument ourselves and seeing it, and we're very, very grateful for all that you've done to help get this monument in place. So thank you.